Good evening, and welcome to the monthly meeting of the Arlington Board of Zoning Appeals, which is also known as the BZA. My name is Charles Smith, and I'm the chairman of the board, and this board is made up of 5 citizens appointed by the Circuit Court. In addition to myself, we have Judy Freshman to my immediate left, Vice Chair Inta Malice to my immediate right, Paul Melnick to my far right, and Peter Owen to my far left. Also is present the professional staff, including Stephen Rissy to my extreme far left, and Cliff Hogan seated in the gray jacket at the computer down at the table. Let's see who else we have here. Mark Hamela, zoning technician, also seated down there, and Jackie McNeil, the administrative technician, to whom you should give your speaker slips, which I'll refer to in a little while. Again, thank you for being here, and I want to extend to you all a warm welcome. Now, to avoid disruptions, I ask that you please turn your cell phone or pagers off or put them in a silent mode. On the front table, you'll find copies of staff reports for each case which are before us tonight. Now, I recommend that if you've not seen the report on your case, that you come up, take a look at it. There's only one copy, so then put it back so that others who might have an interest in looking at it can review it. Now, this board's powers are prescribed in the Code of Virginia and are set out in further detail in the county zoning ordinance, which is adopted by the county board. The Board of Zoning Appeals does not have the power to rezone property or to amend the regulations which are set forth in the ordinance. That authority rests solely with the county board. This board does have the authority to do 3 things. Number 1, we can approve use permits that allow modifications of placement requirements for structures on 1 and 2 family lots where there's no option in the zoning ordinance to allow such modifications. Number 2, we can grant variances from the specific requirements of the zoning ordinance. And number 3, we can decide appeals of decisions of the zoning administrator. When approving use permits, the Board of Zoning Appeals may impose conditions that we deem necessary and in the public interest, including limiting the duration of the use permit. In order to approve a use permit, the law requires that we find that the proposal meet conditions and that the use permit will not adversely affect the health or safety of the persons residing in the neighborhood, will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood, and will not be in conflict with the purposes of the master plans and land use and zoning related policies of the county. Now, to do this, the Board of Zoning Appeals shall consider whether the modification will promote compatibility of development with the surrounding neighborhood because the structure's overall footprint, size, and placement are similar to the structures on the property surrounding the lot in question, and whether the modification will help preserve natural landform, historical features, and/or significant trees or foliage. When granting variances, the burden of proof is on the applicant to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that it meets the following criteria: that the strict application of the terms of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, or granting the variance would alleviate a hardship due to a physical condition relating to the property or improvements thereon, or alleviate a hardship by granting a reasonable modification to a property or improvements requested by or on behalf of a person with a disability, and the property for which the variance is being requested was acquired in good faith and any hardship was not created by the applicant, and that the variance granted will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property and nearby properties in the proximity of the geographic area, and that the condition or situation of the property concerned is not of so general or recurring nature as to make reasonably practicable the adoption of an amendment to the ordinance, that the granting of a variance will not result in a use that is not otherwise permitted on the property or change the zoning classification of the property, and that the relief or remedy obtained through the variance is not available through a special exception process as provided for under the zoning and/or subdivision ordinance. Now, when deciding appeals of the zoning administrator, this board must use its judgment to determine if the administrator was correct. Now, this evening, cases will be called and a brief staff report and recommendation will be given. Following that, board members will ask any questions of the staff which we may have. And next, applicants or their representatives will be given an opportunity to make comments to support the application or appeal. And if they choose to make a comment, they must come forward to the podium so that their comments can be recorded for the record. Next, all speakers for the item will be called. Speakers must fill out a speaker slip which is available on the table in the front of the room or on the corner of this dais. And after we hear from speakers for and against the proposal, the board may permit the applicant a brief opportunity to clarify any points. The board may ask questions of any speakers, but does not permit, and we won't condone, any cross-examination or direct questioning by others. We've deemed the following time limits for speakers to be sufficient: 20 minutes for appellants in appeals cases and 5 minutes for applicants for use permits and variances. In all cases, speakers representing organizations shall have 3 minutes and individuals 2 minutes. Now, after the board has gathered all the information that we need and discussed the case, we'll decide the matter by voting on a motion which is duly made and seconded. A majority is needed to approve any motion. Any appeal from the decision of this board must be made to the circuit court in accordance with state law. After your case of interest is heard, you're welcome to stay for the balance of this session or to leave at your convenience. And again, thank you for being here, and I'd ask Mr. Rissy to please call our first case.
Case number V-11439-18-VA-1 is a variance request by Sanctus LLC, the owner, to permit a lot coverage of 66% instead of 48% is required for a single-family detached dwelling in the R5 zoning district with qualifying front porch. Regarding a new detached single-family dwelling with front porch in the R5 zoning district, premise known as 1031 North Cleveland Street. Staff recommends the board adopt the attached resolution granting the variance with conditions.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Mr. Rissy?
Mr. Chairman, as a procedural matter, this item and the next item are related applications on the same property, and sometimes when we do that, we hold both hearings before we decide the motion on either matter, and so I just recommend that we do that in this case.
Is there any objection? No. It's by unanimous consent. We'll hold a hearing on both matters and decide them individually after having hearings on both matters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr.
In terms of questions for staff, I guess my main question is, are there any changes from this in this application since the last time it came before the board?
There aren't changes to the plans that I'm aware of. The applicant can go into further detail, but there is a new disclosure statement based on conversations the board had with the applicant's agent at the last hearing.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's hear from the applicant then.
Hello, my name is Andrew Moore. I'm here on behalf of the property owners. I am Arlington Designer Homes Construction, LLC. I believe the other, actually, addition to that is we've received at least 2 letters of support from the contiguous neighbors, which I believe you asked for specifically, Mr. Owen. So we have wide neighborhood support. We held no less than 5 functions or outreaches to the neighborhood in which we tried to get input, and we have received, positive responses. I haven't heard anything negative about it. Mostly it's widely supported. Am I speaking towards both the variance and the use at this time? Okay. I think the variance, staff can support that. I would hope that you guys could support the variance as well. I think the real issue here is the use permit and the rear setback. I think that's why staff has an issue with the use permit. And I'd just like to point out a couple of things. The first of which is that staff has said, well, we could remodel by right in order to not have to do a use permit. The structure does not allow that. There's no possible way we could go up 2 floors. There's no possible way we could remodel that. Once we got into remodeling it, Arlington County would declare it a new structure, and we'd be back here having to decide the same thing. It is my professional opinion that it is not feasible to remodel the structure. It needs to be torn down. The other issue that staff had was they said, well, there's no examples in the neighborhood of a lot line that is this close to the rear lot line. This is the example. I mean, there is a specific example on this lot that's been here longer than me. So I would say that, there's no better example than what we're trying to do. We're trying to improve the overall use of the lot to its best use. It is at the rear of 2 lots, so it's far back that it doesn't affect anyone's living quarters now, and there is actually a structure back along that lot line to the most contiguous neighbor. So, I mean, I think it does meet I think it is within the neighborhood, very much within keeping with the neighborhood there. And lastly, we have endeavored to create a like-sized product that we feel is marketable, and so we've created the smallest footprint, smallest house that we feel is marketable on this lot, and we feel like it's compatible with the neighborhood in general. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. Any questions? Mr. Owen?
Yes, that's a very significant tree that appears in each photo that we're seeing here to the right of the house here. What's the fate of that tree?
We are required by Arlington County ordinance to provide parking, so the tree is where the parking would have to be. So the tree would come down. We had an arborist come out to take a look at it. They said that, you know, the construction would destroy the tree. There's no chance of saving it. However, the neighbor that to the right owns the property, and we'd be happy to plant, you know, a tree or two in the neighborhood on their property. Obviously, this is 1,500 square feet. It can't be, you know, but we'd be happy to plant one within 10, 20, 30 feet of the existing tree.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Melnick?
Yeah, I had, you know, anytime there's a request for a variance, you have to look at the unreasonable restriction analysis and the hardship analysis. And I did see in the staff's report, it did mention the possibility of renovation, you know, and the fact that there, you know, basically we do have a structure here, you know, and whether, you know, what the staff's position is about, you know, what the report says about renovation, about going 2 stories, going straight up, because you're saying it's just not feasible. So
Building codes won't allow it. It is not. I mean, I've done an investigation of the property. There's no. We can't do it. It's impossible for renovation.
Is that structural? Like the
Yes.
Current structure just won't allow that?
The structure will not allow it. In order to go up a second story, you need to have a footing that is 10 by 20, I believe. We don't have that at all. There's no possible way to do it. And then if we replaced the whole foundation, that becomes a new structure by definition of Arlington County. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if we endeavored to remodel it, it would, by definition, become a new structure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Moore? Mr. Owen?
If we just issued a variance that said it's a buildable lot, you can build, notwithstanding that it's undersized, but you can build new construction. But we gave no other relief. Is there a buildable structure then?
I'm sorry, is there a what?
So in the past, sometimes what this board will do, has done on at least one other case, is there was an undersized parcel, and we didn't approve any specific plan. We just said, you know, because they came in and they asked for a big house on a small lot, and we said, that's too big, but we're not going to make you come back. We're just going to declare this is a buildable lot, notwithstanding the minimum lot size, but otherwise work within the by right setbacks and so forth. Is there an envelope left on this? Like, how big is the envelope after you have all the setbacks?
It's a 40-foot deep lot, so it's negative 10 feet.
So between the front setback and the rear setback, it's not buildable unless you also get relief from the setback requirement.
We would need a variance and obviously a variance for lot coverage and obviously a use permit. I mean, I believe we are applying for the minimum that we need in order to put any structure there at all. And I'll defer to Mr. Reese for.
I can chime in and say the variance isn't to make the lot buildable. This lot would actually be buildable by right under the zoning ordinance because of the time in which it was created. That was an exercise that we went through with the applicant's agent before they submitted. This is just for the allowable coverage because it is such a small lot. The main building footprint isn't an issue because you're able to use that minimum size for the zoning district. This is just for that additional lot coverage because of the size of the lot.
questions of Mr. Moore. We have a couple of speakers.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Please stand by. Let's start with John Breslin of 2606 11th Street North, who has signed up to speak in favor of the application. Good morning. Or
Hi.
good afternoon.
Thank
good
you.
evening.
We own two properties very close, one right across the street and one down the street a little bit and right across the street. And we'd be thrilled to have them tear that down and build something nice.
Have you looked at the plans, Mr. Breslin?
I have. I'm
Okay.
no expert, but it looked very reasonable to me.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, what are the
Ms. Ballas?
addresses of your property? What are the addresses of your property?
1027 North Danville. So my backyard, I'm standing in my backyard right now as I'm looking at that.
Okay, I see it.
And then there's 1080 Cleveland Street, which is straight across, and then we're the next house, which is actually facing 11th Street.
Thank you very much.
So it's 1026 11th and 2606 11th and 1027 Danville.
Thank you very much. And the other speaker we have signed up is Laura Rodriguez of 1080 North Cleveland. She too has signed up to speak in favor of the application. Good evening.
Hello. So my home faces that structure directly. And what I would first say is when you mentioned the tree, I've been in the neighborhood for about 10 years and I've seen many a tree come down, and I'm somewhat leery of that large looming oversized tree, the way that it could fall, if it does, could nick my house, my car. So I'm okay with it coming down because it really seems disproportionate in size to what's in the neighborhood existing. The current structure is dated, a bit of an eyesore, so I really welcome something new, and I think it could really be a nice addition to the neighborhood. When I walk, as I frequently do around the neighborhood, I see tons of new construction, I see lots of renovations, and I think it would be a welcome addition, and I think we ought to allow them to have that same benefit of renovating this property as well. So I hope you concur and let them go ahead with construction.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Ms. Rodriguez? No? Thank you very much for coming. Are there any further questions of the applicant? If not, this matter is with the board. Let's start with the variance. Ms. Freshman?
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the variance V-11439-18-VA1 with the attached conditions.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Ms. Freshman and seconded by Ms. Malice to adopt a resolution granting the variance for V11439-18-VA1.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Owen.
Before we vote on the variance, I'm just curious about my colleagues' views on the use permit, because if we're going to entertain any deviation from the same plan for the use permit, if we're going to go with the staff recommendation for denial, I would have some further questions about how the motion is stated for the variance. But if the board's inclination is just to approve everything as proposed, then I don't think that discussion is needed.
Okay, that's fine. In the period of this discussion on this motion, I think I saw Ms. Freshman's hand, but then I heard Mr. Melnick, so I'll go with Ms. Freshman first.
I would support the use permit as requested.
Mr. Melnick?
Okay, I'm inclined to go with the staff recommendation on the use permit. So hopefully that's helpful. You know, and that could, like you said, that could alter the plans under the variance. Yeah, what they're asking for.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, I would propose that we defer consideration of Ms. Freshman's motion until we've had a discussion about our inclination on the use permit.
Well, let's hold up. Let me ask Mr. Rissy what comment he wants to make right now.
I just wanted to point out that based on discussion at the previous hearing, I actually took out the condition on the variance case that the plans match what was submitted based on Mr. Owen's recommendation last month as to avoid this conflict.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I guess as an initial matter, I would point out that there seems to be a potential flaw in the proposed motion on the use permit that staff has recommended. All of the findings are the findings that would compel approval. But then there's the final word is denial. So there's 4 findings in a use permit. And if we find that the 4 things are true, then we must approve. And so the recitation in that is that the applicant met their burden for each requirement. So I think if we're going to deny, and I still haven't stated what my own opinion is, but if we were going to deny, it might be worthwhile to discuss on what basis we would deny the use permit.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice.
So, since the variance is completely separate in terms of what follows.
Right.
Okay.
Isn't the coverage percentage related to the?
Well, I mean, we could grant a coverage percentage regardless of what the plans looked like. And the applicant would just have, but let's say we did that. The applicant, under any circumstance, would have to come back for a use permit?
Correct, based on the...
This design or another design, any design that they came back would require a use permit.
Correct.
But we, by granting the variance, have specified the envelope. So I'm looking at a situation, and we have something later tonight where a building permit is not sought in a timely manner. The variance will stand in perpetuity regardless of whether a use permit, am I wrong? Yes.
I'll just point out that condition number 3 is proposed by staff is that the applicant shall obtain a building permit to construct a structure by
Okay.
May 15th, 2020,
All right.
or the variance is void.
And that's what's tying it to a date. But so it does tie things together a little. Still not the same plan, but a time frame.
But we could get out from under all those technicalities if it turns out that we're going to approve some version of a use permit, and which we might well do tonight. And so that's why I'm recommending we talk about the use permit first, because I think there may be 3 votes for an approvable use permit tonight.
Yeah, I favor it.
And then let's go retroactively and fit that to whatever we need to say in the variance.
But again, they remain separate. If the applicant changed his mind
Right.
tomorrow
Yes.
and wanted to build something different, the variance would stand as long as,
They otherwise met the requirements.
right. So there's a slight separation.
Yes.
It's not likely to happen, but they would have the right to change that, but would have to come back again
Right.
for permission. Okay.
The use permit deals with the side yards. The variance deals with the coverage. You can't deal with coverage with the use permit. So that's the only reason why they're kind of bifurcated.
It just seems to me if you approved a variance with let's say 66%, that pretty much fits with this use permit. If you, for some reason, say we don't like the use permit, then what is the point of giving them a legal envelope? You're just saying, I don't like this design. Is there something weird about the front porch, or what is it you don't like that still, and expect them to redesign, come back and ask for another design that is 66% coverage? It makes no sense to me.
No, I don't disagree with that, but I just wanted to establish the rights of, the applicant could potentially come back with something different. Because unless we tie them together.
Right.
Can we tie them together? In other words, can we make the variance dependent on this particular design?
Most often, there's a condition that ties it
Right.
together through the plan submitted and shown in the staff report. And by all means, you are
And
welcome
this
to
one-
add that back
I have that.
if it makes sense.
I mean, my feeling is if a significant redesign is what it would take to get the board's approval for a use permit, we should probably just defer it all and have it all align. If minor surgery could allow an approval tonight on something slightly less than what the applicant's asking for, then we might be able to patch it together tonight. But I just don't know what the board's will is, and so I don't know what this right starting point is.
Well, my view is 20 by 23 is a very small structure. That's what I'd give him. I don't have a problem with his design. Yeah, what is it? 22.7 by 20.6. So I don't think there's a whole lot of design wiggle room in there personally.
No. Okay.
So when the matters with the board with respect to the variance, any more discussion on the variance?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Owen?
So just to put my own view out there, my view is, I think this is what the applicant is proposing within the constraints of the law is probably the best that we can expect. But I'm really disappointed that there's not a good path to avoiding having a driveway be such a big part of this project. I mean, it's a double whammy. First of all, it's a big driveway compared to the size of the project, leaving aside the foliage issue. And then we're also knocking down this gigantic tree, which all of our policies say we should try and keep. And this is something we asked about last time, and I think the answer, I don't know how much it got studied in the last month, but apparently the answer is, short of a lengthy county board rewrite of the code, there's no way to get out of that situation.
We can't relieve the requirement.
But it makes me really frustrated, because I think when people walk by and see what happens on the site and see the days of what, it's going to be a major operation to remove that healthy, gigantic, ancient tree. And people are going to say, well, why is that the rule? And we were involved, and they might blame us.
And that is, in a perfect world, the preservation of all large circumference, old, beautiful trees would be achieved. And in Arlington, we come really close to a perfect world, but we don't always make it. I think this is one of those cases where, as Ms. Rodriguez pointed out, the perfect world may favor the taking down of this tree,
Right.
To prevent it from doing that on its own accord and damaging property in the process.
And then the flip side is that the law and equity don't seem in accord with regard to the setbacks. I mean, the law says that somehow this has got to be a buildable lot. I mean, that's clear under state law.
Yeah.
And there's this tiny, tiny parcel, that's completely out of step with all of the other parcels that have this zoning in Arlington. And so it has to be made as a buildable lot. And so how are you going to fit any reasonable setback? Like, it just can't be done.
No.
Right? And so I think...
So it constitutes a taking at that point.
Well, yeah, but we're not giving a variance for the setbacks, right? Like, it almost makes me wonder whether the whole thing should be just a variance and no use permit involved, because the use permit law itself is the unreasonable law as applied to this property.
And
right?
prior to the use permit law, that's exactly what it would have been.
Right.
Just a variance.
So I feel uncomfortable about saying yes to the use permit, because I worry that then the way we've gotten some analyses in the past is you find the smallest setback that you can find within half a mile of the property, and that's deemed reasonable for all other properties. And so I'm not sure I want to grant a 5-foot setback on this property, because then all the rest of Clarendon Courthouse and Lion Park and Lion Village suddenly are eligible for, that kind of setback, because we did it on this completely unique site, for which a variance is appropriate, but a use permit is saying it's the same. Variance says it's different. Use permit says, no, it's the same, and it's not the same.
Right.
So, fundamentally, I hate mowing down that tree for a driveway that isn't needed on that site, but I think it's pointless to have that argument any further. And on the rest of it, in terms of the overall legal scheme, in the end, I think they should be able to build something like this, but I'm not sure that I'm not sure the paperwork sets us up in the best possible way to do it.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice.
Is it possible to insert a whereas just for the record that this isn't precedential?
Well, I mean,
This is
by law,
Virginia.
they're not. I mean,
This is Virginia.
we are required to review each case and decide it on its merits. And only in describing the surrounding zoning district are comparables discussed. And those aren't just prior projects. They are all structures that may be similarly situated. And so, it's not the kind of thing that we can get around. But,
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Melnick.
so the way I look at it is, to me, of course, staff does the best they can, in coming up with comparable setbacks and whatnot. And so I think that's just, the way it is with the staff, what they do. And so with the use permit, what the staff is saying here, it makes a lot of sense to me. And so I'm inclined to go, basically not get closer to the boundary lines than the staff has found minimum, in their analysis. So that's where I am. And I know, it seems a little bit mechanistic, but I think this is the best information we have to go on as far as like what was found. So that's what I'm willing to do.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Owen.
There's one board member I haven't heard from yet, but it seems, I have the sense that there's 3 votes to basically approve the application. So in light of that, I think I might be willing to proceed unless there's further arguments that people want to make.
Well, I hadn't heard Ms. Freshman withdraw her motion.
No, I'm sorry. I wasn't asking Ms. Freshman to withdraw her motion.
Oh.
I was curious about Ms. Malice's views on the matter.
Oh, I understand.
On the use permit?
Oh,
On the use permit.
you didn't see me nod. As far as the parking goes, I think we tried to explore that.
Yep.
I mean, I think it's ridiculous that we have to put that driveway there.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't found a way around that.
Right.
We don't have the power
Right.
through the variance process to waive that requirement.
Right.
So if anything gets built there, it's going to have a driveway for 2 cars. Regardless of how else we rejigger things.
Yep.
And I really don't know that we can put the driveway someplace else without, without going, back to the square one, where we've already been. So that's my view regarding the tree. It's just, I think it's unfortunate, but we're weighing county board policy that we can't change. Regarding the setback, something's got to give on this site. There simply isn't enough room to build something a little bit bigger than an apartment, and to make and to allow some economic value here. So I'm willing to go with the motion with the design as proposed.
Okay.
My only concern that you noted was that it's not ideal, It's not entirely justifiable by a use permit.
Right.
Because it's really the nature of the lot and that's driving the decision, which really becomes a variance issue.
Yep.
But again, those two things are now bifurcated. I don't know that we can throw it into the variance. I mean, staff would have to talk about that.
Mr. Chairman, after we vote on Ms. Freshman's motion, I'll seek recognition to make a motion on the use permit that's not exactly the same as the staff's.
Okay. Any further discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to grant the variance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. And now on to the use permit in V-11439-18-UP1.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Owen.
in case V-11439-18-UP-1, I move the alternative proposed resolution in the staff report, but modified. The modification would be in the final whereas clause, in the third line, after the word county, to add the words solely because of the unusual placement and size of the parcel. Solely because of the unusual placement and size of the parcel.
So it's not in conflict with the master plan or the land use policies solely because of the...
Unusual placement and size of the parcel.
Okay. You got that, Mr. Rissy?
Yes.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Owen to approve the subject use, the alternative proposed resolution, which grants a use permit with the modification of the third whereas as described. And it was seconded by Ms. Freshman. Any further discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? By a vote of 4-1, the ayes have it, and this matter is approved. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Moore, and for the citizens who came, thanks for coming.
The citizen discussion was very helpful. Thanks.
Yes,
again.
absolutely. In fact, the citizen discussion was very helpful to me, too. Mr. Rissy, please call the next case.
Case number V-11460-19-UP-1 is a use permit request by Lawrence and Janine Nesbitt. The owners permit a front setback of 24 feet to the wall, 16 feet to the porch, 15.8 feet to the porch eave, and 3.2 feet to the stairs instead of 25 feet to the wall, 21 feet to the porch, 19.5 feet to the porch eave, and 5 feet to the stairs is required from North Courthouse Road right-of-way to permit a setback of 11.7 feet to the walls exceeding 4 feet instead of 25 feet as required, and to permit construction of a building exceeding 2.5 stories at 24 feet from the street right-of-way instead of 25 feet as required, regarding the construction of a new single-family dwelling in the R6 zoning district premise known as 2117 North Courthouse Road. Staff recommends that the board attach the proposed resolution partially granting the use permit request with conditions. An alternative proposed resolution has been provided should the board see fit to approve the application as advertised. And please note that there is supplemental material for this case that came in after the application packet was assembled and printed. It is an additional letter of support.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rissy, and that additional letter is noted.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Owen,
I have a couple of questions for staff.
please.
I was a little confused about the fact that staff seemed to be simultaneously saying that recommending approval for a 25-foot setback, but also denial for a 25-foot setback. Do I have that right, and can you help parse that a little bit more?
So staff is recommending approval of a structure where they have proposed it. Staff found examples of other structures that were closer to the street right-of-way than 25 feet. But none of those structures were more than 2.5 stories. So staff is not recommending the approval of a structure of more than 2.5 stories within 25 feet of the right-of-way.
So even though the BZA doesn't have jurisdiction over height, and we only have jurisdiction over placement when it comes to use permits, because there's two different rules about placement depending on the height, it is in practice for this one a question of height. Is that right?
So just like fences that have different setback requirements in different places on the lot,
Yep.
so too this is an example where a house has different setback requirements based on height.
It's a good analogy. Thank you. I have another question on a
Please, go ahead,
different
Mr. Owen.
topic. So, is the rear setback proposed here compliant?
It is compliant, but just barely.
Because it seemed like it might have been a few inches less than the minimum.
It is 25.3, I believe, from the rear property line.
Okay. And it needs to be 25?
Correct.
Okay. And my final question is, where exactly is the proposed new wall that would exceed the 4-foot height restriction?
So it's along the sides of the driveway leading to the garage.
It's perpendicular to the street.
Perpendicular to the street, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Freshman.
I just had a question about the first whereas, or the first condition on the proposed resolution. It's confusing to me that I understand that if we approve as advertised, all the numbers are there. And presumably they agree with the drawings. But in the first condition on the proposed resolution that says, except it shall not exceed 2.5 stories and the stairs can't exceed 8 inches. And no, it just seems to me that if we're going that route and taking the staff's recommendation, we wouldn't have drawings to approve. Because you're essentially saying, okay, we have the drawings here, and this is what was submitted, and we're okay with that, except you have to change the height and a couple of other things. And are we taking it on faith? I mean, ordinarily, if we were picking apart an application to that degree, we would say go away and come back in 2 months with drawings that we can actually look at and perhaps approve. And you know, noting in the approval the date of the plans. So, I mean, I know we're not to that point yet, obviously, in the resolution, but it just struck me as really odd that the resolution as suggested by the staff is pretty open-ended.
If I may.
Please.
In this case, I do think that there are some pretty minor modifications that would be required to the structure to bring it into conformity with what staff is recommending approval for. In this case, I can't confirm with 100% certainty, because it does have to get approved by a plan reviewer, that it is really the elimination of the false dormer on the front of the structure that is making this be a structure of more than 2.5 stories. It's really not, you know, eliminating a whole story here. It's eliminating the portions of the structure that exceed what we consider to be a half story.
Well,
and similarly with the stairs, it's adding some grades so they're not exposed.
Perhaps Mr. Lawson can address that, because I think that in the end, whatever would be agreed to, his client would have to abide by too. So it seems like we're getting into territory where one false step or one bad measurement causes a whole lot of angst.
Ms. Malice.
Just to clarify a comment that Mr. Owen raised, we often suggest different heights. That's within our purview to say that we will approve with a
Like
height
this.
less than what the applicant came in for. You know, it's not just placement, but that we've had situations where people, you know, we don't allow people to build over porches because, you know, we don't prefer the height that close to, you know, within a front setback. Okay, just
Correct.
clarifying that.
Any further questions of staff? If not, we'll hear from the applicant or their representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm William B. Lawson, Jr., and I represent the applicant. Could you go back one slide where it shows the townhouse project across the street? My father and I had the honor of doing that townhouse project that is directly across the street. And when we did that, we worked very closely with the community, the neighborhood, the Civic Association, and in particular, the individuals that face courthouse. And they wanted two things in the zoning, and that was that the townhouses not face the street. And you know, modern planning is that the front should face the street. But the reason for that is they didn't want the curb cuts because they didn't have enough parking. And the second thing they wanted was for the street to be widened in order to provide for parking on both sides. And so the townhouse developer, in fact, did that and accommodated those two requests. There were some others the Civic Association had, but I think those two are important to kind of, so you all understand why the townhouses got done the way they did. I just handed you all a list of reasons why we think this modest request should be granted, and I'll kind of highlight what I think are the most important. And one of those is that when I began my career, there were street and sidewalk easements. And as my career progressed, the county started analyzing sidewalk easements and street easements. and the past was kind of lost. And in the past, the county would often want dedications, and they wanted to not pay, and so we would get rulings that we wouldn't lose our setback rights and we wouldn't lose our density. And so Mr. Flynn, Charlie Flynn, when he was county attorney, was the force behind the fact that now the definition of street says that it includes street easements. And he said you can't count something two times. And so we have the modern interpretation that you have to set back from the back of the easement and not from the property line. And that's a more recent phenomenon. This street used to go through, and the plans were that it would eventually be widened. When 66 came through, that was dropped, and the bridge across the parkway was demolished. And I can remember as a child crossing that bridge. You all have some pictures there that show the retaining walls, and this shows it a little bit on the house side of Courthouse. And we think it's highly unlikely, given the cost of adding on to the street or putting in a sidewalk. I think it's highly unlikely the county would be interested in doing that. This lot only has 5,000 square feet. It's zoned R6. And because of the way the staff is interpreting the easement, we're losing another 250 square feet. So we do have the undersized situation that we're dealing with. Now, there was a little bit of discussion about the dormer, and it is the existence of the dormer on the front facade of the house that generates the decision that this is not 2.5 stories, but rather 3 stories. If we just took the dormer off, I think it would satisfy the staff. However, we really think it's important that it be on there. It costs us money. It costs the owner money. But one of the reasons I wanted the townhouse picture up there is it's kind of compatible with the dormers on the townhouses. And you can see on the single family that they pretty much have dormers as well. So we thought it was a very important architectural feature. The final thing that I'm going to say, and I say this with respect to Mr. Reese, who I have a great respect for, but I think that the ordinance talks about compatibility of development surrounding neighborhood, not the surrounding single family. So I think you have to also consider the fact that we have these townhouses. They're much taller, they're much closer to the street. And so when you do that, I think you see that we're compatible. So for these reasons, I would respectfully request an approval of this request. One thing I will share, we are going to be able to redesign the stairs. So the one issue where we and staff do not agree is the 1-foot encroachment for the 3 stories.
very much. Questions, though, of the applicant's representative,
Mr. Lawson,
Ms. Malice?
you're saying that, what are you going to do about the stairs?
We're going to be able to redesign the stairs to accommodate the request that there not be a use permit to allow them being over 8 inches.
So,
That's correct. We can redesign them, yeah.
so you won't need permission for the stairs? You're going to
Yes, ma'am.
do
We
that
do not.
so that they're
We do
be
not
by
need
right?
permission for those stairs.
Okay. All right. By the way, I'm not sure I agree with comparing single-family homes to permissions that have been given to multifamily. Two different zoning categories, and I think that would, for some single-family residents who agree to have more dense development in their neighborhoods, that would be very distressing to hear that now that multifamily zoning sets a precedent for the single family.
Well, the use permit speaks to compatibility of development with surrounding neighborhood.
I
In the
understand that.
variance, it talks about the same district.
I just, lots of times, single-family residents are persuaded to accommodate multifamily within their neighborhood
Right.
with the idea that it's apples and oranges, and now we're sort of using one to justify another.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Owen?
I have a question for the applicant, or a couple questions. One is, since you've got the stair issue fixed, it seems like a lot of rigmarole for 1 foot. Is there an architectural or structural or engineering reason why 24 feet as opposed to 26 or 22 feet is the right number of feet back from the street?
Well, fortunately, we asked the builder that question. And the builder, this particular builder does an awful lot of single-family homes, but they were not aware that you measure from the back of the easement. And so they designed the house thinking they were safe, and then they discovered when it hit zoning that, in fact, they were not safe. And in order to do a redesign, and my client was the builder was kind enough to write this down. Here's what they said, that the home has been fully designed and engineered with structural consultants, civil engineers, and truss manufacturers. And I don't know if you noticed, but we actually had building plans that we submitted. And they said redesigning the home would require re-engineering from these trades, as well as adjusting architectural work, mechanical heat load calculations, and it would be an expensive endeavor, and that they would really like to go ahead and build what was originally designed for the owner.
Thank you for that response. And my next question is, what is the difference in the peak roof height of the current structure versus the peak roof height of the proposed structure?
Well, they had to estimate, and they're thinking probably 5 to 10 feet. They don't know for sure, but 5 to 10 feet is their best guess.
So maybe about half a story taller for the peak.
It is a little bit taller.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have several folks signed up to speak in favor of the application. Let's start with Jackie Spires, 2124 21st Road North. Following that will be Patrick Purtell, following her.
Hi, good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here, I guess, twofolds. One is I'm president of the HOA of the Hillcrest Development, which is the townhouses right across the street. We have no problem with the improvement to the neighborhood. We think it's going to be great. And second of all, I'm here as an individual homeowner saying we definitely support this. We're in 4-story townhouses, and our setback's 18 feet from the public right-of-way. So I know there's a difference between single-family and multi, but still the feel, it's not a long street. So we found it very compatible. We support it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your time and for your service on the HOA and for coming tonight. Next, Patrick Pertel, 2121 North Courthouse Road. Welcome.
Yes, I live right next door, and I'm in favor of the proposal. I've looked over the plans, the design of the house. If anyone's going to be impacted by the height of the house, it'll be mostly me. I looked at those plans over. I anticipated what the impact would be, and I have no issues.
Thank you very much. Any questions of this speaker? Appreciate it very much. Again, thanks for coming tonight. Last speaker on this application is Hugh Schaefer, 2129 and 2125.
Can't leave that one out. So I own both of those, 2129 and 2125.
Thank you.
I've been in a neighborhood for over 30 years. I actually lived in a single-family house that was where Hillcrest now is, some 1920s bungalow, and I watched that development come along. I have absolutely no problem with this. The stock of housing there, 1940s, it needs it. And to have neighbors like the Nesbitts choose to stay in Arlington rather than have to leave for more room, take the kids out of school, make those kind of changes. I one day, with my two properties, hope to age in place and maybe add on to those. So it's about that community, and again, no problem with, I've seen the designs, I've talked to the builder, and I have absolutely no problem at all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Any further questions of the applicant or of staff? If not, this matter is with the board.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Owen.
I'll just observe that I think that the 4-foot fence limitation probably wasn't drafted with this kind of situation in mind. So I think that's like the easy one, that fence, driveway retaining walls perpendicular to the street probably were not the core of what that is about. So I think that's the easy one. And to be honest, since I have the microphone, I'll just say I'm with the deletion of the stairs element, I'm inclined to support the use permit.
Okay. I didn't hear that as a motion, so I'm waiting for one, but it was close. I know. Ms. Freshman. There you go.
Okay, I move, excuse me. Okay, I have to make this up. On the matter of case V-11460-19-UP1, I move the alternative proposed resolution. Approval is advertised.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Ms. Freshman, the alternative approval as advertised.
Mr. Chairman?
Seconded by Mr. Melnick. Discussion.
Mr.
Ms.
Chairman.
Malice?
I'm sorry.
Ms. Freshman, would you accept a friendly amendment or I guess I seek unanimous consent to modify the motion to indicate that the site will include no stairs exceeding 8 inches, as the applicant has already agreed to?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Owen.
I would, just to further clarify that, ask unanimous consent to delete in the first whereas clause the two references to stairs. So the phrase "and 3.2 feet to the stairs" and 5 feet to the stairs, and insert the word "and" in two places ahead of that to make it grammatical.
So you would strike "except," starting with the word "except," all the way through to...
where are you?
The first whereas, number 1. After the date May 10, 2019, you would strike the rest of that up to...
I don't think I'm seeing the same thing you're seeing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's in the alternative.
I was looking at the wrong
On
resolution.
page 7, the second resolution down, line 3, where it says setback 24 feet to the wall, comma, 16 feet to the porch, right before the word 16, you'd stick in an "and." and then you delete on that same line and 3.2 feet to the stairs. And then in the following line, where it says 25 feet to the wall, comma, and 21 feet to the porch. And then after the parenthetical, delete and 5 feet to the stairs. So I'd ask you,
So,
yes,
and delete the and the 5 feet to the stairs.
right. So I'd ask unanimous consent to make those 4 alterations.
Mr. Rissy, did you get that?
I did.
You did?
Yes.
Is there any objection? So ordered. Now back to the motion with that change in that where in the first whereas of the alternative resolution. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion as amended signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? And the ayes have it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Lawson.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Owen.
in the next item, I am acquainted with the applicant, and so I will recuse myself from participation in the matter.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming and participating in this hearing. And Mr. Risty, if you would call the next case.
Case number V-11461-19-UP-2 is a use permit request by Amir Tahimi, the owner, to permit a right side setback of 3.1 feet to the wall and eave instead of 10 feet to the wall, 6 feet to the eave as required from the adjacent property line, and to permit an aggregate side yard of 12.1 feet instead of 18 feet as required in the R6 zoning district regarding a one-story rear addition in the R6 zoning district, premise known as 3110 9th Street North. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you very much. Questions of Mr. Rissy? Hearing none.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Melnick.
Okay, I would just note administratively that the address is on the disclosure statement. It should be property that is affected by the application. It should be the subject property. But there's just a number of different addresses there.
Okay, let's look at this disclosure statement.
But,
for the public's information, we look at these rather closely because they describe who the owners are.
Yeah, I'd note that the parcel address in the table appears to be correct, though. So,
Okay, 31110 9th Street North. And then lender. So what's the issue, Mr.?
it's just under paragraph 1 where it says addresses, it really should be the subject property. In the
Okay.
legal description. But it looks like maybe there was a misunderstanding that if there's ever a property it conceivably, I think this is like surrounding property and not the subject property.
So, what is, it's 3106, 3112 9th Street North, 3109, let's see. Lots, maybe.
Mr. Chair?
Maybe Mr. Rissy can explain.
I think Mr. Melnick is pointing out correctly that the applicant probably put here the addresses they thought were affected by the application and not the subject subject address. We can correct that administratively, I believe.
Yeah, I mean it seems clear from the whole of the documents, though. But just so it's clear.
So, yeah. What should have been described as the property of the application, and in this case, they read it maybe ultra literally list the addresses of all property that is affected by the application.
Yes.
So
Well, that's true. That is.
That is.
Under what circumstances would there be multiple properties there?
It would only be multiple properties there. Traditionally, the way it's filled out, it's for the subject property, so it would only be multiple properties if multiple properties were requesting relief.
In one application?
Yes,
And that's possible?
it's possible. We have multiple
yeah.
lots that have multiple individual lots within them.
Interesting, okay. So the real estate, I mean, this disclosure really is, that should have simply said 3110 9th Street North, and then the block and the subdivision. Okay. This can be amended by the applicant simply coming in and interlineating and putting down and initialing and,
Staff believes so.
all right. And that can be done after the fact.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Melnick, for pointing that out. You are sharp-eyed with respect to the disclosure statements every month. I appreciate that. Because in one case, it was really an improper disclosure statement, I think, a couple of months ago. All right. Thank you very much. Now, back to the subject property. Mr. Tahami. Amir Tahami? Or their representative?
Speaker slip?
Hi, my name is Maggie Wills. I work for Sun Design Remodeling, and I'm here on behalf of the homeowners.
Okay.
I apologize for the disclosure statement. That is exactly what happened. We assumed it was all of the affected addresses. So we are asking for permission to place a sunroom on the rear of this home. The lot is non-compliant with a Zone 6. The proposed addition to this home, the home, when it was remodeled originally, also had to get a variance because of this same setback issue.
Any questions of Ms. Wills? No? Ms. Freshman?
So in this picture, this deck is going to be removed,
Correct.
and it's a one-story addition.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Melnick?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Yeah, let's see, any other questions? Hearing none, the matter's with the board. Mr. Melnick?
Okay. In case V1146119UP2, I move that the Arlington County Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit with the conditions as stated.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Mr. Melnick and seconded by Ms. Freshman that we grant the use permit in the subject case. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The matter is granted. Thank you very much for coming, Ms. Wilson.
401.
Abstention.
One
Chairman, for the
abstention.
record, I abstain from the vote.
I'm sorry. By a vote of 4-0 with one abstention, the matter is granted. Thank you very much. And please call the next case.
Case number V-11462-19-UP-2 is a use permit request by Tara Tieford, the owner, to permit a right side setback of 6.7 feet to the wall and eave instead of 8 feet to the wall, 6 feet to the eave, as required from the adjacent property line regarding the enclosure of a carport in the R8 zoning district, premise known as 2408 North Upshur Street. Staff recommends the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you very much. Questions of Mr. Rissy? Hearing none. We have the applicant, Tara Tieford. Welcome. Anything you want to add?
Good evening. No, thank you. That was a great recommendation.
Thank you very much. You didn't, as the applicant, you didn't need to fill out a speaker slip, but that's okay. Glad that you marked for approval, though. Ms. Malice?
So I'm looking at your neighbor outreach. Do you have any additional information from neighbors?
I reached out to the entire, we have a listserv for our entire street and then a couple of neighbors that are surrounding Upshur Street. I emailed all of them and heard a couple of responses, which were already provided. I also reached out to my direct next door neighbor and neighbor across the street, both of whom said they would happily provide a letter, one of whom did and the other one just didn't.
So we have a letter from 2411, that's your neighbor across the street?
Correct.
But we have nothing, that's all we have.
I believe there was one provided by Jay Honigstock, who
No,
lives...
We didn't have an address for Jay. Do you know what address he lives at?
J.H.
Yes, he is within line of sight. Let me grab my phone. The Honigstocks are at 2368 North Vermont.
I don't think they're on this map.
Well, they kind of are. They're next to, they
They're
live
probably
next door
here.
to 2370,
20,
and that's the very bottom,
okay.
correct?
Correct.
So did you show your neighbors your plans?
I have not shown them the plans, no.
Well, it looks like Honigstock saw something. It says, great idea, good luck, love the porch.
You can see the front
Oh,
porch
okay.
is a recent addition
Gotcha,
by
gotcha.
the same contractor who is here.
I was
So
trying to bail you out.
that's a new porch.
What Ms. Malice asked about is something that we take seriously, and that is the fact that neighbors have had an opportunity to review development that's going to go on in close proximity to them, especially the ones who are contiguous, and that they've had an opportunity to give us their opinion. And soliciting their opinions by listserv is a wonderful idea. However, it may be like that, I go through my deletes in the morning so quickly. They may say, oh yeah, that's fine, and then delete it and feel like they have no need to do anything more, and so you don't get the kind of responses that leave us wanting. So you result in the situation that leaves us wanting. Because 2,400 and 2,500 are...
2,400 is unoccupied.
It has an owner.
Yes.
It has an owner who's never there. I've never met that person, having lived there for 8 years. Because the footprint of the house is not changing and we're simply adding walls and a garage door, which will enhance the look of the house and keep my neighbors from having to see my children's bikes that they always fail to put away, despite my many requests. We believe that this is a positive development, and having had the yellow signs up on the street and a couple of outreaches with no objections.
What about 2,500? Who lives there?
Sue and Andy Parker.
I'd sure like to know what they think of your project, since
Okay.
it affects them.
Well, you've spoken with them about it, though.
Yeah, I've spoken with them, and I did solicit a letter and got the response, absolutely, I'll get that to you this morning, and it just never arrived.
She's a busy person.
Yes, she is a very busy person.
I'll just disclose for the record that I lived in 2411 for 15 years. And so I looked at this property, and I think it would definitely be an improvement.
Oh, you lived at 2411?
Yes.
Interesting. Right across the street.
Well, hello.
I didn't have to do a site visit.
I'm a little, this is not for you, but I'm a little concerned that you didn't understand, that it wasn't made clear to you kind of what our expectation was, because for all the other cases that have come before us so far, we've actually had written responses from all the neighbors. And
Right.
I guess you didn't know that was what was required.
I was told that that is part of the process, and in fact, when I've noticed the prior cases before you this evening, I did think that my case was different simply because the footprint's not changing at all. Yeah. But I'm happy to solicit the letter from my 2,500 neighbor more fervently and provide it later.
Any other questions of the applicant? Any other comments? Personally, I'm comfortable with your description of your outreach and the fact that you are able to describe conversations with your next door neighbor who's most directly affected. It makes me uncomfortable though when so many applicants are prepared and have received some kind of support or some kinds of comments and did show plans. Though, on the other hand, I understand your point. It's relatively small. It's not expanding the footprint. It seemed like a no-brainer that wouldn't require a lot of consternation. And I'm not uncomfortable with the proposal at all. I'm just one vote, though.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Owen.
I share the concerns of my colleagues that, the reason why we do all this rigmarole, and it's not just an administrative approval, is because oftentimes it's unpredictable, neighborhood to neighborhood, site to site, hillside to hillside, tree to tree, what people are going to find important and want to bring to the attention of the authorities before something like this is approved. And a huge part of our mission by state law is to take into consideration how anything's going to affect the neighbors, and the easiest way to learn how is it going to affect the neighbors is for us to hear directly from the neighbors. As well, it tidies things up in terms of what happens after us, because your neighbors have a legal right to appeal our decision to circuit court, and we like not being reversed by circuit court, and so it's comforting to us to know that the neighbor is unlikely to appeal something that they've told us that they approve. And as my colleagues indicated, in the overwhelming number of cases, in a situation like this, we would at the very least have comments from the neighbor that's a few feet away. And so it's a little surprising, and unusual for us not to have that. And it makes it it's a harder time for us than to make the decision.
Sure.
That said, I did visit the site, not having lived there for 12 years. I did go and look, and in my opinion, as somebody who hasn't heard from the next door neighbor, it seemed compatible to me with the neighborhood. So, I think I'm inclined to support it, but it is disappointing not to have it teed up the way that it usually is for us. That would make it a slam dunk.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Melnick.
So I share your views, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Owen. So I'm right on board with that. So I'm prepared to vote for it. Just I subscribe to everything that was said. And I do appreciate your efforts to reach out, although you didn't get the letter. That's ideal, but just we're supposed to look at all circumstances. So I'm satisfied.
We do have one more speaker, though.
Okay.
And if there are no more questions of the applicant, I'll be happy to hear from and ask Mr. Walter Bainbridge.
Thank you.
But you're not a neighbor.
No, I'm the contractor.
You're the contractor.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add?
I really don't.
Okay.
Except that, we're not changing the footprint. It's just as is.
Okay. And your address is in Sterling, Virginia, 22900 Shaw Road.
Yes, sir.
Any questions of this speaker? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Melnick.
Okay, Mr. Chair. I'm prepared to make a motion.
Be happy to take one if
All right,
there's no
so
further discussion.
in V 1146219 UP2, I'm making a motion that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the proposed resolution granting the use permit with the conditions as stated.
Thank
Second.
you. It's been moved by Mr. Melnick and seconded by Ms. Freshman to adopt the attached resolution approving the use permit in 11462-19-UP2. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, and this matter is granted. Thank you very much. Please call the next case, Mr. Rissy.
Case number V-11463-19-UP-1 is a use permit request by Kathleen McGowan, the owner, to permit a left side setback of 8.3 feet to the wall instead of 10 feet to the wall as required from the side property line, and to permit a rear setback of 19.5 feet to the wall, 18.5 feet to the eave instead of 25 feet to the wall, 21 feet to the eave as required from the rear property line, regarding a two-story rear addition on a non-conforming semi-attached two-family dwelling in the R27 zoning district, premise known as 2012 21st Street North. Staff recommends the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions, and I'd like you to please note there is supplemental material for this case that came in after the application packet was assembled and printed. There are 2 letters of support and 1 additional letter of opposition.
Thank you very much. Yes, there. I'm noting the supplemental materials. Any questions of Mr. Rissy? Okay, well, let's start with this hearing and have the applicant. Kathleen, or her representative. And you are?
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Sean Kunzler. I'm representing Kathleen McEwen this evening. I have with me our builder, Mr. Scott Spangler, who will be able to answer any technical questions that the board may have.
Thank you very much. I have your speaker slip, Mr. Kunzler.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sure. If I may, just like to kind of talk the board through what we're doing, why we're doing it, and some of our thought process throughout as we made decisions about what we sought to do, what we're seeking to do here. So we are seeking a use permit to build a 2-story addition that will be by 12 by 16.7 feet. It'll be a 2-story addition that will not go above the current peak of the roof. The addition will also not exceed the current footprint of the patio, so we will not be reducing any green space or anything like that. So we also took into account, we wanted to keep the addition short enough so as not to impact party wall neighbor's tree in his backyard, because it kind of hangs over the fence line a little bit, so we didn't want to include that. And we also made the deliberate decision after speaking with the party wall neighbor not to put windows on the second story facing his property. So why we're seeking the permit, we have recently merged our households, and so we need the additional space to meet the needs of our family. We really like living in the Highlands neighborhood. We had family in the Highlands neighborhood, so we would really like to, if you feel fit to grant the use permit, be able to stay in the neighborhood and expand. We believe that it will also not only increase our own property value, but increase the desirability and overall value in the neighborhood. I think that is all I have. I think the recommendation that Mr. Rissy made, we fully accept all of the conditions that he proposed and will abide by them without hesitation. So standing by for any questions that the board might have.
Okay. Questions, Mr. Kunzler? Mr. Owen?
In considering this addition, are there other homes in the neighborhood that you looked at that you thought had done something similar that you're patterning your construction off of?
Yes, there are. So There's several doors down from us. There's a home very similar, well, it's actually the exact same layout as our, same side, that has a 12-foot addition. And then we also looked around kind of the neighborhood and just walking around the Highlands neighborhood, just to of what we wanted the exterior to look like. And so we're pretty much going to kind of, well, ours is going to be 2-story. We're going to kind of try to, in 12, the dimensions will be different.
You're showing us a picture we don't have. We'd love to have that. We'd love to make it a part of the record if you want to show it to us.
I would love to show it to you.
Okay.
May I?
And you can obviously take that out of your book, right, and give us that page, because I'm sure you can just produce more with the click of a mouse. Thank you very much. Let me put the number on this.
So it would obviously fit our 12 by 16:7 dimensions, but we would essentially model it after that. It's the same kind of brick color pattern, and we would choose like the similar siding, and actually that's pretty much the color that we would like to go with.
Were there any 2-story additions in the neighborhood that you thought might be a precedent for what you're doing?
So there are not any 2-story additions in our neighborhood per se, but we did, doing some research, find other 2-story additions in the R27 zone. Those would be at 703 North Oakland Street, 705 North Nelson Street, and 3723 North 6th Road.
So Ashton Heights?
I'm sorry?
The Ashton Heights neighborhood? That's what it sounds like.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if the neighborhood for certain. I just have the address. I'm sorry, my data is incomplete.
It's all right. The address is highly specific for the record. So.
Okay.
Right, this is a building materials. He said it's going to look like that. Any further questions of Mr. Kunzler?
Not at this time.
Okay, stand by.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And let's see here. That was Scott Spangler, who's your builder. Okay. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Spangler, at this time?
Not particularly.
Okay, he said not particularly. Okay, we'll hold that. And then John Haggard has a speaker slip. You are... Oh, you're with the contractor. You're with Mr. Spangler? Okay, all right.
Just here to answer any questions.
Okay. You're contractor and the construction manager. Well, let's go then to the owner. She said filled out a speaker slip. She didn't need to. Eileen McCowan.
Oh, I'm not the owner, I'm the sister and the neighbor.
Oh, okay. Why did Kathleen? Oh, Kathleen. Is your sister? Is that what you said?
Yes, she's my
Okay.
sister. She's way up
You're
on
a
this right
neighbor
now.
and your sister is doing this.
Yes,
Welcome.
yes. I have the benefit
Well,
of being both a sister and a neighbor, and I love living in the North Island area right now. I do actually rent. The square footage of my apartment is about the same square footage of her home, and that's kind of the point to why she's trying to expand her footprint right now. I know that she and Sean are planning on moving in together and expanding their family. She's been a perpetual homeowner and a tenant at the property since 2007. I know that specifically the townhomes around her have been rented out. They use them as rental properties, and I know that she is actually a fastidious and permanent tenant of her domicile, if you will. But I think that the upgrades and improvements to the area are really great. I've been there before Moms came in on the corner, and North Highland has really been growing. The Dawson Bailey house has been upgraded, and the place is great for families to move in at the moment. And I'm actually looking at buying a place, and I have to say that being able to update those townhomes would be a benefit to actually purchasing them. I did actually get a chance to go and look and have a walkthrough. I have a real estate agent right now. I walked through a couple of them not too long ago, and they do need some extensive remodeling. And I know that Kathy has actually, since 2007, been putting a lot of money and investment into our property.
What is your address, please?
It's 2024 North Scott Street,
202, in the, is there an apartment number?
Yeah, 0301.
Okay, we have a letter from you.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have signed up to speak in opposition, John Giblin.
Yeah, that's fine.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for coming here tonight.
And your address?
My address is 2014 21st Street North. I am the adjoining, I share the party wall with the property in question. Thank you. I guess the first thing is, I have some significant letters of opposition from someone who's 2 doors down, myself, and then also some professionals. This is out of my skill set. I went to art school. I'm sorry, I don't know a lot about zoning and that type of thing, but I decided that I would let other people give me guidance on how to pursue this. So, and also let's just stick to one thing. The reasons that the people who are not in support, the letters that I got were from, and I can give you copies of these, I don't know if they got here on time, but Karen Elson, who's the highly productive real estate agent, and I can paraphrase here, after reviewing the plan and plot, I believe the addition will not only have a negative impact on Mr. Giblin's use and enjoyment of his property, but will also negatively affect the sellability of his property in the future. There will not only be a decreased pool of potential buyers, but also a decrease in the price of the home. One thing also I did want to make clear as I looked around, on our block there is not a single 2-story addition to any duplexes. And I had a very, very difficult time finding drawings of this. Also, I am listed as a supporter for this from an email that I sent on March 15th. I have subsequent emails asking many questions, obviously not being a supporter. So why my name is right now as being a supporter, I don't understand. So if we can please remove that would greatly help.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Owen?
Just a point of I think we also have an email of opposition from you in the record. So I think your position is now clear. It's
Great.
clear to us
Okay.
before the hearing started.
But I just didn't like the fact that if I didn't show up tonight or didn't anything, no one would ever know. And I would just be listed as a supporter when I wasn't. But I don't want to overstate that point. And then this other letter of opposition from somebody who's about 2 or 3 doors down, and all these names can be verified. Just to do the change will lessen natural light, cause less green space. These changes create less desirable property values and in turn decrease property values. Homes closest to 2013 will have a 9x12 or whatever the structure. I was never able to pin it down because I've been never given an architecturally scaled drawing of the plan. But I guess we're accepting about 19x22 in that range. Structure looming over their already small yards. The shattering and hovering will cover about 1/3 of some of our neighbors' backyards. In addition, this does not add value to the neighborhood and is not a good variance. And so this was from a neighbor 2 streets, 2 or 3 doors down. The other neighbors on the other side did not say they would oppose, but did not say that they were for it either. They just they're renters, and they're in the head of an estate out in Iowa. So I don't think they have a lot of personal vested in this. I did go ahead and take some pictures. Can I bring these up? I just wanted to show you the density.
Mr. Chairman, if we could just get the pictures, but we need to get the microphone.
Yeah. Give me you can go back to the mic so that we can record
comments into the
those.
mic.
And I'll note these pictures for the record.
These properties were built in 1942 as an effort for the State Department war effort. And so the proportions right now are already very, very tight. Adding a 22-foot by 12-foot wall of plastic overhanging my yard is in no way I'm going to see a precedent that we want to set in our neighborhood. At one point, I understand that people do want to expand these, but they're small houses. And so that's kind of where I am, where I have the letters of support and the letters of opposition. And so I also noticed that anybody who did do support does not have a visual sight line to this new addition. So there'd be no way that they would ever see this addition from their property.
Can you wrap it up?
Yeah, I think I'm done. If you have any other questions for me, I just included that. More pictures here of the property, just so you can get the sense of scale.
We'll put them in the record. We'd be happy to.
Yeah. Oh, and I also did include one area in Arlington where I could find an addition onto a duplex house, and I included that here so you can see.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just one quick question. So on my side, I have absolutely no setback. So this wall is being built according to the plan within 1/8 of an inch of my yard. And that's the law, 22 feet or 19 feet. That is the law, is that correct?
Well, you share a wall, so you don't have a side yard setback.
Okay.
You don't, and neither does he. But you have a rear yard setback, and that's what he's asking for.
From someone else. Okay. And then I will wrap this up. Sorry. Do you guys look at what people are shown to approve?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And you can see in the staff report, they made copies of what they circulated and asked folk to approve. And it had
okay. And none of those, what they were circulated, mention anything about the height or the setback from my...
The height is not an issue. It's a rear yard setback and a side yard setback.
We have that information.
Okay, I just wondered if this be... Okay,
and we'll take those... I'll take those pictures and make them a part of the record. Thank you very much. Thank you. Any questions of this speaker? Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Melnick.
I know that this might be just pure speculation, but is there any addition that you would be in favor of? Because I see that you're definitely not in favor of this one, but...
Well, a single level addition that wouldn't tower over my yard is completely acceptable. Also something that might be aesthetically pleasing, that was architecturally designed and just not, put out. If we use glass or some modern materials, I could be in favor of something like that, sure. I'm not complete, we can't have it completely the way it is.
Okay, I appreciate the clarification.
Okay, anything else?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
There are no other speakers signed up to speak, either for or against. Any additional questions of the applicant? If not, I'll consider the hearing closed and be happy to entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Owen.
I don't think that the criteria have been met to support a use permit for a two-story addition. I think if it's clear that a two-story addition would be precedential for this neighborhood. And in order to support that, I would want to see overwhelming support from the neighborhood, saying this is what our new vision for our neighborhood is, and if this gets repeated in half the other parcels, that'd be great. I mean, that's sort of what I'd be looking for in this kind of situation, and we don't have that. And even on the paper record, as Ms. Malice pointed out, height matters, and it has an impact. And I just don't think that what's being proposed on this site is similar to where two-story structures are placed and the size that they are in this particular neighborhood. So, I'd probably lean in favor of a one-story addition. There's several other one-story rear additions in this neighborhood, but there are no two-story additions in this neighborhood. So, to me, it's pretty clear-cut as a no.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice?
I also share Mr. Owen's thoughts about, given the precedential nature of this, that we at least had more definitive feedback from other neighbors that understood that it's a two-story addition and the general size of it, and that this would be a step forward to allowing this in every home in that area.
Well, let me ask both you, Ms. Malice, and you, Mr. Owen, if more input from the neighbors with respect to the design plans would be helpful, and thus would a deferral for that purpose be productive?
I suppose if there was overwhelming support from the neighborhood, I would consider it. I'm never allowed to really say that what I would do at a subsequent hearing, but it certainly would be relieve a lot of issues I have in my mind about whether people really understand what this might mean for their properties.
Mr. Owen?
I think if the applicants are open to a redesign, especially if they're open to a one-story redesign, I think there's a very viable application in here. If it's 2 stories or they'd rather find a different place, to have the right size for their family, then I wouldn't want to put them through the ringer, of some fool's errand trying to get it all run. I wouldn't want them to spin their wheels if ultimately there's not much of a chance of approval. I feel like for what's proposed here, and given the impact that the neighbor has already shown that would occur on his property, one of our criteria are, is this similar to what else is happening in the neighborhood? No. Is it detrimental to other neighbors? Yes. Already it's a steep climb out of that. But the neighbor has said a one-story addition would not be detrimental. And the staff report has some examples of one-story additions in the neighborhood. And so I think it's fair game for a one-story addition to come back. I still would want to see more robust feedback from all the abutting neighbors. As you may have seen earlier tonight, that's really important to us to have all of the immediately abutting neighbors who are going to be directly affected, seeing their written feedback about it. So I think it just depends. What I would not want to do is I wouldn't want to. Sometimes we tell applicants, so why don't you take a deferral and talk to a few more neighbors. But I think this application plus 2 more neighbors saying, well, I guess I wouldn't mind. I don't think that's going to push this for me, into a place where I would now be able to approve it. That's not what I think would be sufficient to meet the legal test in my mind.
Mr. Chair.
First, Ms. Freshman, and then you, Mr. Melnick.
I agree. It's a very uncomfortable situation when you look at the tax map, and there are all different kinds of footprints. But basically, when you look at this proposed addition, which is 12 by 16, that's half the house. That's going back half again. And going 2 stories, that's substantial. That's like 50% more or less of the, again. So it isn't minor. It's certainly up to the applicant if they could live with a 1-story, but that's not much of an expansion for a growing family. So that would be their call. But I think it's almost difficult for neighbors to envision what a 50% increase would mean. It's certainly not difficult for the neighbor who shares the wall with this house. But others may find it theoretically acceptable and not really realize that really is, by some of the standards of additions that we routinely see, it's really big in terms of the percentages of the house. So I think that's my concern, is that if they are willing to entertain 1-story, fine. You'd still want a lot of feedback on it. But it may just not be a situation that they can live with, that kind of reduction.
Mr. Melnick.
So I share the comments made by Mr. Owen and Ms. Freshman, that I can't support this with the current plans 2-story. So that's where I am. Just like Mr. Owen said, it's, not meeting those 2 criteria are just like baked into these plans. So I think, there's no way I could vote with this 2-story plan.
Well, let me ask Mr. Kunzler if he would come back to the podium, and after having heard that discussion, where it appears that there is a deficiency in support for your 2-story addition, but there may be support for 1-story, would giving you more time to redesign be something that you would consider?
So Kathleen and I did discuss contingencies where the board had some opposition to this, and so one of the concessions that we were willing to make are not unreasonable. We understand your criteria and what you have to look for is, so if you would be willing to approve it, write it in as a condition, we would accept a 1-story addition where we would like to then have the top of that just be like a patio, where like we would go out from our bedroom onto that patio. It would also take the attic and just remodel the interior of the attic into a bedroom, and then also finish out the basement.
Well, what you would need to do then is submit plans, new plans for that. And what you could do is avoid paying another filing fee by getting a deferral and coming back with, under the same application, new plans that are asking for something.
Oh, okay. So that's not something that could just be written in as a condition.
Correct.
And okay, I was just trying to save the month.
Well, yeah, you need more than 1 month for that anyway, because what I heard was 2-story is a no-go, 1-story maybe. It's going to be contingent on looking at plans.
And feedback.
Yeah, and you got to get feedback from your neighbors again. I know there was significant feedback.
We had feedback from the neighbor directly behind us. The one next to us, we reached out to the actual owner.
Well, and even,
he didn't oppose.
And even Mr. Gilpin early had emailed and had agreed, but apparently has had some change of heart.
Yes.
But I didn't find the neighborhood outreach that deficient. But what I did hear was that what was actually being described to the neighbors maybe wasn't the fullness of what's going on, nor the future ramifications. That's particularly what Ms. Malice pointed out, is that, folk who are considering this might want to think about, oh, okay, well, this down the road could mean others doing the same thing, like my neighbor that I might not want to because I'm single and I'm happy with the space that I have, but the neighbor next door has 2 kids and they may want to go back and do that. And we find this on the south side constantly on the south side. A bunch of these are on the south side. They're somewhat smaller than these, though, that are on the north side. But nevertheless, it would take more than 1 month, and it would be a complete redesign. And I know you lose a bedroom upstairs, but maybe you can do something with a dormer off the roof, perhaps, with that attic space. I don't know, but that's the kind of thing that you would work out with your builder, and then, yes, there's costs involved to redesign, but if you really want to stay in this neighborhood, and I have the feeling that you do, these short-term pain may result in long-term gain. It may be.
Yeah, no, and I understand the board's opposition to the 2-story. I mean, I think we're willing to consider the 1-story, and we could make internal changes to the structure that could suit our needs at least for the next 3 to 5 years.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Owen.
I'd just add, so you heard some at the hearing tonight with other applications, but just so you know, the gold standard for neighbor outreach in a situation like this would be that you had prepared your plans, you had provided a copy of the plans to each of the abutting neighbors, which in your case, I think the across the street neighbors are hard. This is like an institution or
the directly across the street neighbors. It is a condominium.
Right.
So we sent a letter to the condo association,
so
and
you could do that again for the condo, but both sides, the party wall neighbor and the driveway side neighbor, and then in the back 3, because there's at a corner you're adjacent, directly behind, and then the other corner, right? So there's 5 neighbors there. And to have each of those 5 sign something that says, we saw the new plans, and these are our comments. The neighbors don't have a veto, right? We decide whether or not we think it's compatible with the neighborhood. But if you get the feedback from the neighbor and they say, we support or we oppose because this is the thing, this is the part of it that concerns us, or we think it's great and we would wish everyone would do this, it would improve the value of the neighborhood, whatever the feedback is, after they've seen the new plans.
The new plans, yeah.
That's the gold standard.
All of the neighbors that we engage with, we shared the plans that were provided as part of the package.
Right.
The one neighbor, I would note that at 2010, when we contacted him, he said, hey, he wouldn't oppose it, but he did not want to be involved in any way, shape, or form.
Right. Sometimes that's what happens.
Yeah, and one of the neighbors never responded. We went over, knocked, left a letter, no response. So at that point, I've got to respect someone's privacy.
But now you have new plans, so
there's
reason for perhaps another letter dropped off or something, right? So now you know what the gold standard is that you could try and meet.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Malice?
Just quickly want to add to that. Now, you may also find that some of the residents are renters, and it is possible to locate the owners. And
that is exactly the case with 2010. The residents are renters, and we did locate the owner, and he said, I don't want to be involved. I won't oppose it.
Okay, so just something in writing, a message back from him that, he's not opposed to that.
And you're not discouraged, as you have done some other outreach to others in the neighborhood, right? Because the zoning law just changed for this neighborhood, right? And
correct.
So perhaps there's a community discussion about what's the vision that your community has. And so if you want to share plans or get additional support and feedback for those plans from other neighbors similarly situated on those 2 halves of the block, that's also great, right? It helps us to know that there's been that community discussion has been occurring. That's less at the core of what our expectation is, but also encouraged if you feel inclined to do it.
Understood.
Ms. Freshman.
On the matter of V-11463-19-UP1, I move deferral to the July I think it's 24th, BZA meeting.
Correct.
Second.
I think Mr. Owen, did you second that? Okay, no. Ms. Malice.
Okay.
Moved by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Malice to defer this matter to the July meeting of the BZA for the purpose of obtaining additional neighbor support and redesign. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. This matter is deferred. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Gilpin. Please call the next case.
Case number V-11464-19-UP-1 is a use permit request by Leland and Jacqueline D. Scott. The owners submit a right side setback of 10.8 feet to the wall, 9 feet to the post, 7 feet to the eave from the right side property line, instead of 25 feet to the wall and post, 21 feet to the eave as required, regarding a one-story side addition with structural post and roof overhang on a pipe stem lot in the R6 zoning district, premise known as 6322 22nd Road North. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions. And please note there is supplemental material for this case that came in after the application packet was assembled and printed. It is a letter from the applicant's agent covering some of his outreach with the directly adjacent neighbor.
This is Tito's letter, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Rissy? Mr. Owen?
There was some discussion in the application about miscommunication between staff and the applicant. And does staff have any comment on that history?
No.
Okay.
Was there incorrect information provided in the past to the applicant?
It's entirely possible that it was. I'll leave it at that. It's entirely possible that it was.
Okay.
But you have no knowledge of what transpired?
Outside of what the applicant has told me of, I wasn't aware of any of it personally.
We're going to find out. We're going to get to it. We'll talk to Archie Build in a minute.
I'll have another question for...
Go ahead, Ms. Malice.
In the letter from Tito, signed by Tito, it talks about a question of who owns pavement in the pipe stem. Have you had a chance to look into this? Do you know anything about repair of the pipe stem pavement?
So, just according to the plat that has been provided to us, it is a shared driveway, privately owned by both pipe stems, and so the pavement belongs to those two property owners.
So, when you look at the plat divides the driveway in two.
Correct.
So is it presumed that one side is responsible for their side of the street and the other is their side of the street?
So often in situations like this, we'll see that there is a easement granted on both properties for joint access, and that easement usually comes with some kind of condition that designates the responsibility for maintenance of that structure. I don't specifically see an easement for access here, so I also haven't done any deed research into whether there is an easement for access on the property.
But Mr. Tito could direct Mr. Ham to further look into that easement to find out, give an answer as to his question in terms of responsibility for the pavement.
The answer likely lies in the deeds to the two properties.
That's what I would think. Thank you very much, Ms. Malice, for that question and your answer, Mr. Rissy. Let's see, we have a fair idea of the width of that pipe stem also. I don't know if I want to, I guess it's pipe stem, but okay. Okay. Well, any further questions of Mr. Rissy? Hearing none, The applicant we'd hear from, either Leland L. or Jacqueline D. But I presume this is Mr.
I am
Tito.
It's actually
From Archieville.
Francisco, but Tito's my nickname.
Francisco
Yeah. Okay.
Carates.
So good evening, Mr. Chairman and Board.
I'm sorry. I
and
can
Mr.
read it
Reese.
now.
So I'm here for the Scotts to answer any questions you may have. I've been working with them on this project for quite a while, as far as designing, and I can answer questions about the communication if you have them. I'm not prepared to give specific names, but I have them of whom I communicated to. But basically what the information I was given...
Is that material now? Does it matter now, though?
No,
Okay,
I don't think so.
So let's just...
Okay, so essentially what they're requesting for is a modification of the side yard setback. And the original intent of the design was to be within the standard R6 zoning setbacks, because that's what we believe they were. We tried very hard to not change the footprint of the structure and work within the parameters of the existing carport, because that's something they desired. And the purpose of the improvements is so they can age in place, because they like their home and they want to stay where they are. Outside of that, I can answer any other questions you may have.
Questions of Mr. Cortez?
I just had there's a letter here from someone who has an address at 2229 North Quantico. And I'm looking at the map trying to
It's
figure
the
out.
across the street neighbor.
It's right across the street from.
You have to draw a line exactly front. So if you go down the stem of the pipe stem,
2229. Oh,
Outside the circle.
okay, not quite on the map.
it's the
Yeah.
geometrically perfectly across the street house.
Okay, thank you.
It's actually down the street. It's so across the street, it's down the street.
Down and around.
Got it. Okay, thank you. How did you know that?
He visited the site.
Just looking at the number, street number.
Yeah,
I
on the
could.
weekend before the meeting,
Yeah.
Mr. Owen often visits the sites.
I do too.
Yeah,
Does
I've
that
seen Judy.
Yeah,
We've
we
bumped
run
into each
into
other.
each
at the sites. By the way, thank you for doing that outreach. As you saw earlier, some people have struggled even to get the next door neighbor communication going, and you were diligent enough to determine that there was a geographically across the street neighbor and actually get feedback from them. And that was a good effort. So thank you very much for doing that.
Sure.
That's crazy.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Owen.
I have some questions for staff when we're ready for that.
Okay, I want to hear, though, about the issue with respect to the neighbor and the use of the pipe stem. You're the owner?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
What is that? How do you all manage that?
Well, it's been a bit of a sticking point between us, and I think this is an opportunity to solve the problem. We've agreed to replace the asphalt pipe stem as a shared, as a joint project, and Mr. Tito is going to be preparing a project proposal for us to do that. But at the end of the project, we plan to replace the asphalt pipe stem. One of the problems is that there's been some sinkage at the end of the asphalt that causes water to pool up when it rains. The asphalt is in need of resurfacing.
Thank you. We'll take this photo. Gotcha.
So I think our next door neighbor has been concerned about this for a long time, and has approached us over the years to do something about the pipe stem, and we just have never gotten around to doing something about it. But as part of this, at the end of this project, we plan to replace the asphalt and solve the drainage problem.
The deed says that it's sufficiently wide that you can both use it at the same time, which is a relief. Some aren't. But what does the deed say with respect to maintenance?
I'm not really sure.
Okay.
And I think both Mr. Ham and I have the same question as far as if we replace this, well, what about maintenance down the road? And
Right.
we'll have to come up with some understanding and written contract to specify.
Record that.
Yeah.
I'm not giving you legal advice,
To
but you record it.
yeah, that, so that we will know and have some understanding of who's responsible for it and how we will maintain it over the years.
I think, I think as a starting point, you need to understand what if there's any agreement or easement in place right now that already sets, are you aware of an easement on?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It seems like I remember seeing an easement line going down
It's on the plat.
the middle of that
The
pipe
easement's
stem.
on the plat?
Because there is
Excellent.
there are utilities
Yeah.
that are located at the ends of the pipe stem that I'm sure have.
It's on his side. It looks like it's on his side.
Can I have something I can show.
Go back to the, is that the,
Is that the
is
plat
that
that
in
we
the
have?
record?
Is that the one we have?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. No, it's exactly the same as what we have.
We have in the
on-
record, thank you.
We have that. Thank you. He was referring to the plat that is, what's the date on that, Mr. Cortez?
This one is dated.
2/23/18?
Yes, sir. That's
Yeah,
correct.
That's what we have.
If you go to an attorney for a couple $100, they can do the search for you and find out if there's covenants and agreements that run with the land that describe how the maintenance is supposed to be done. It's a very basic research for any land use lawyer.
Okay.
Title insurance company might be able to point you to someone. Real estate agent works with those kind. I mean, it's the same people that you sign the paperwork when you buy the house. That's the lawyer that's the same kind of lawyer does this kind of research.
Okay.
Any additional questions? I think, I don't have any other
That's down
speaker
here,
slips, I don't think.
My questions are more general and directed to staff.
Okay, let's hear Mr. Owen's questions to staff.
If we're done, I don't want to keep these guys standing up
Yeah,
here.
you don't have anything more right now, do you?
No.
Okay, don't go far, though.
So my question, on July 17, 2017, the county board, and not the BZA, approved a use permit for reductions to the 25-foot setback on a new single-family dwelling unit on a pipe stem lot in another part of Arlington. Is it true that the county board approves those pipe stem lot setback reductions when it's new construction, but we do it when it's not new construction? Is that the gist of it?
The short answer is yes. The longer answer is the county board oversees the creation of any new pipe stem lot or the construction on any currently vacant or vacant up until 2003 pipe stem lot. And anything that was created and built before 2003 is under the jurisdiction of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Thank you. And then when the county board did that approval, the approval included a number of conditions that are right now not typically included in BZA use permits, including notification to neighbors about construction plans, some tree replacement issues, things that have become pretty standard on the county board side of use permit approvals, but that we have not delved into yet. Are there any policy reasons why we should not look to the county board's example to perhaps use similar conditions in our use permit approvals in similar circumstances?
Yes, I'd say part of the county board's discussion of how to regulate development on these lots back in 2003 when deciding to give the existing lots to the jurisdiction of the BZA was in part to give them some relief without having to go through the onerous, expensive, and highly conditioned county board process, with the understanding that these homes already existed within these neighborhoods and were being given significantly larger setbacks than they were originally constructed with. So I think there was an understanding from the county board that, sure, if someone wants to put a new one in, they may need to meet some higher conditions than one that's been existing on this lot. I think this one is since 1969 or 70. Getting lots of nods.
They're nodding
there.
yes.
Yes. So I think there was an understanding that when things have been part of the community, they may not need the extensive conditions that new ones would.
Okay. Thank you. That's a very helpful answer.
Yeah, that was very helpful. I remember 2003 when those changes came about, though.
I don't personally see any reason to differ from the staff recommendation on this particular application, but I do think that perhaps at our next BZA work session, that maybe we should take a look at those conditions, because I think some of them are not that onerous, but might promote neighborly relations and tree preservation and stuff without a lot of expense to applicants. So I just feel like that's an appropriate hunting ground for professionalizing our operation a little bit more. But for this application, I don't see a need to hold them up to do any of that.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Any further questions of staff or the applicant? Any other speakers on this matter? Okay, this matters with the board. Ms. Freshman. She had her hand up. She beat you, Ms. Malice.
No, go ahead. I'll concede to her.
Okay, Ms. Malice.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Please do.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution approving the use permit V-11464-19-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Malice, seconded by Ms. Freshman to approve the use permit in 11464. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would just say, it sounds like the builder here feels like they've really been put through the ringer, and I'm glad that there's hopefully a good result at this point, but it is regrettable when people feel like they're not well served, and so I just want to acknowledge that you must be feeling pretty frustrated, and we heard you. We don't have any control over that, but we did hear you, and thank you for your calm demeanor, at least at this stage of the game, and hopefully this helps a little bit to move you along.
Yeah, I too want to thank Mr. Cortez for your professionalism of the package, and with respect to whatever occurred. It is unfortunate that sometimes the experience of customers does not meet the ideal in customer service, but hopefully that the result will make that less painful. No. The applicant's representative is thanking Mr. Rissy, because there's an attempt to record things. If you want something to go into the record, that's fine.
I just wanted to thank him for his call.
Okay. All right, the applicant's representative.
It's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you for saying so.
No further discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it. The matter is granted. Thank you again. Please call the
Next to last
case.
And ultimate.
Case number V-11465-19-VA-3 is a variance request by Roger Ramia, the owner, to permit the construction of a new single-family dwelling on a lot that has a width of 50 feet instead of 80 feet as required, regarding a new two-story single-family dwelling on an interior lot in the R10 zoning district premise known as 3644 North Vermont Street. Staff recommends the board adopt the attached resolution approving the variance. And please note there is supplemental material for this and the next case that came in after the application packet was assembled and printed. It is an additional letter of support.
questions?
Mr. Rissy, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Rissy.
Mr. Owen.
Mr. Rissy, would you mind just briefly reviewing the changes between this variance and the one sought that we already have approved?
I may ask for the applicant for a more detailed accounting of the changes, but it is very similar to the case that was approved last March. The applicant was unable to obtain a building permit within 1 year's time. There have been some minor modifications that I tried to lay out in the proposed deeds. There was the infill of a corner deck and screen porch in the rear. There was an elimination of some chimney on the right side and possibly an additional stormwater planter there. And there was some reconfiguration of the front entry and now porches. And if I'm missing anything, I'll ask the applicant to fill it in.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Ms. Malice?
Mr. Rissy, specifically, do you know, if I'm looking at the plans, this new application is taller? And maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but I'm saying previously proposed, new proposed, mid-roof elevation, building height are different. And I wondered what might account for the difference in the building height.
And that's ASL. We'll
I
get to
will
the applicant.
defer to the applicant.
Any other questions of Mr. Rissy that he might be able to answer? If not, Roger Ramio. Welcome. I knew it was you because there's no one else here.
Oh.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
I'm Roger Ramia. I'm the owner and applicant. With respect to the heights, there may be a slight difference in height because we changed the basement wall height. And the reason for a lot of the delay is because the lot is elevated from the street to the back, and getting the rear of the property to walk out to a flat yard was difficult. So we had to play with the elevation. But what we did do mostly was reduce our request on the use permit allowances by removing what Mr. Risi mentioned. One of the window wells, a planter box, and we basically felt like the left side of the house was so close as is that we didn't want to have any protruding elements on that side. So we got rid of those, and so our application this year is a little less, demanding.
Thank you very much. Any questions of the applicant? Any additional? I'd be happy to entertain a motion, though, then.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Owen?
I'm going to propose a motion to deal with both the variance and the use permit in a single motion.
Without objection.
I'm going to...
Do you have to call the...
I'll call the number.
So in case V-11465-19-VA-3 and case V-11465-19-UP-2, I move that for each of these that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the proposed resolution as contained in the respective staff reports.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Freshman is seconding both of those motions.
One motion.
One motion with two parts. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? And the ayes have it. Good luck.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Risi. Thanks, everyone.
And thank you very much. That was the last case, and the minutes have been circulated, commented on, and I presume what I have in front of me are any corrections that were noted.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Owen?
I move that we approve the minutes as revised.
Is there a second? Thank you. Moved by Mr. Owen, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Adopt the minutes.
And clarified by Ms. Freshman.
Yes. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it. Anything else?
I move adjournment.
Ms. Freshman moved that we adjourn, and is there a second?
Sure.
Been moved and seconded. We adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? And you can stay.
Bye-bye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much.